We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
It's playoff time, and it's now or never. Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. The app is really simple to use. Pick 2 or more players across any sport, pick more or less on their projection, and you can win up to 1,000 times your money. Prize Picks now offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Join Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, available to play in more than 40-plus states, including California and Texas. Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code GOAL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code GOAL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
You know that fresh produce is the best produce. That's why at Kroger, we invest in local farmers to bring you seasonal picks that taste fresh from the farm good, like sweet corn, refreshing watermelon, and juicy peaches. So whether you're a delivery lover, a picker-upper, or you shop in-store, your local produce always tastes 100% fresh, or you get a 100% refund guaranteed. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Write That Down. I'm your host, Justin Knipper. I'm editor at FightGameMedia.com and staff writer at F4W Online and WrestlingObserver.com, and I'm back with pro wrestling author, historian, and broadcast journalist Mr. Fumi Saito. Okay, so today it's part 3 of our profile series on Mr. Giant Baba, where today we continue talking about Baba and his relationship with NWA. We kind of picked up on where we left off last week, and we continued talking about his work with NWA until the late 80s, until his split with them, until it became the walled garden of the 90s. We'll talk about that probably in another episode, probably the last episode. Today we also touched on the original 4 pillars of JWA. We'll get into that early on in the show as well. The episode also digs deeper into the dynamic between the relationship between Antonio Inoki and his rivalry with Baba throughout the 70s and 80s, and this type of quote-unquote war between All Japan and New Japan and NTV and TV Asahi. Also, and how it connects to what the identity of All Japan was and what the identity of New Japan was and how they were different and why they were different. The repeated theme of establishment versus anti-establishment in this Baba versus Inoki war, talking about the philosophical roots of everything. It sounds a little deeper than it really is, but it's something to, it's important to the story. We talked a lot about it today. We'll wrap our series on Baba next week with part 4. I wanted to let you guys know, if you haven't already, please take a second to subscribe to the Fight Game Media Network podcast feed, wherever you download your podcast, Spotify, Apple, Downcast, Stitcher, wherever you download your shows, so that you can get Write That Down in your feed as soon as it goes up. Okay, that really helps us too. Also, I wanted to mention that I recently put out a digital book of all my New Japan Strong television reports called Stronger Than All. It covers all the shows, all the television broadcasts that they put up on New Japan World from 2020 to 2021. It's available on Amazon Kindle right now. If you want to buy it for $4.99, or if you have Kindle Limited, you can read it for free if you have a subscription. So check that out as well if you're interested. Oh, and one last thing. Questions, okay? Tweet us questions, email us questions, okay? I'm at Justin M. Knipper on Twitter. Fumi's at Fumihiko Daio on Twitter. We're gathering questions for Q&A soon, so send them in, all right? So, Giant Baba Part 3, on with the show. Let's go.
Yeah. Okay, this is the third episode of Giant Baba Legacy.
That's right.
Then we already started talking a lot about NWA, National Wrestling Alliance, the influence in Japanese wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Last episode, I went, to rewind the tape a little bit back to 1969. There was no New Japan. There was no All Japan yet. Still old JWA, Japan Pro Wrestling, Nippon Pro Wrestling, right? And the very first NWA World Champion they acknowledged as NWA World Champion was Dory Funk Jr.
Mm-hmm.
And in December 2 of 1969, both Baba and Inoki, already established main event superstar, right? They individually challenged NWA title in Japan. That pretty much established the fact that there was something above Japanese wrestling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the status or stature of companies within the hierarchy.
Up until then, 64, 65 on, Giant Baba was the biggest superstar of all and international heavyweight champion. You and I talked about it. And I asked some non-wrestling fan, English-speaking, native-speaking English, American person, okay? World champion and international champion, which one sound better, right? Non-wrestling fan. And world and international, and a couple people thought international sounded above world or something. And
really,
and it was because you're a wrestling fan and you've seen all the world heavyweight champion and international heavyweight champion is not there, But when you hear international championship in the figure skate or world championship in so and so, and the international sound fancier a little bit sometimes.
I guess so.
I mean, in general term. Anyhow, up until 69, Dory Funk Jr.'s short little, like a 1-week tour, when then NWA World Champion Gene Kiniski or then Worldwide Wrestling Federation champion Bruno Sammartino toured Japan, they came in with their individual champion belt on their waist, but they didn't defend their title. Instead, Bruno Sammartino, Gene Kiniski individually, they challenged Giant Baba's international championship in Japan. That was to make Baba's international title above American championships. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because those existing champions came over with their championship belt on the wearing championship belt, physical belt, but they didn't defend their title. They came to Japan and challenged Baba's title in 67, again in 68. Always 60-minute time draw, so they were equally strong. But the fact that the existing world champion like Bruno Sammartino and Gene Kiniski at the time came to Japan and had this network primetime special title match thing. That Baba was a international champion, and these Bruno Sammartino, Gene Kiniski, they came to challenge Baba's title. So that was very interesting way of handling. That was like a JWA Nippon Pro Wrestling type of booking. Anyhow, in 60, sometime spring, I believe, in 67, Yoshino Sato and Kokichi Endo, the executive JWA, finally became member of NWA. And the name NWA became, is getting really strong about this. Like, it's kind of like a in boxing, WBC, WBA, now it's IBA and WBO and all that, right? But the name, this initial of these, wrestling organization becomes kind of like almost like a brand logo type of thing. and reading-oriented Japanese fan became more educated about the Organization of America, National Wrestling Alliance, Vern Gagne's AWA, American Wrestling Association, and of course Bruno Sammartino champion, that Vince McMahon Sr., Vincent James McMahon's Worldwide Wrestling Federation. It's like, there are 3 different big organizations in America, man, kind of thing in Japan. Anyhow, for instance, back in 1957, when Luthez came to Japan to defend his title against Rikidozan, they didn't announce NWA. It was simply World Championship, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in '69, when Dory Funk Jr. came in with that famous, Gene Kaniski, Buddy Rogers, black leather belt, and 28-year-old, the new NWA World Champion, Dory Funk Jr. See, Dory Funk Jr. was really young once upon a time.
Mm-hmm.
And he came in as world champion, and Baba and Inoki individually challenged his championship. So that really, as a kid, I mean, in my experience, wow, Giant Baba challenging world championship. Antonio Inoki as a challenger, having a title match against Dory Funk. And sure enough, that both title match, Baba against Dory Funk, Inoki against Dory Funk, both time it was, again, 60-minute draw, so no winner. But Dory Funk Jr. successfully defended his World Heavyweight Championship, NWA World Heavyweight Championship. That pretty much conditioned Japanese audience. There was something bigger and better, like as an organization or the governing body of professional wrestling, that's something above Japanese wrestling. Does that make sense?
It really, I'm assuming it made him come off as big time. He's the guy to beat. Baba was the man to beat.
Yeah, up until then. But Dory Funk Jr., brought the belt into Japan and defended title against both Baba and Inoki. And the result of the title match was both 60-minute draw and no winner. But he was able to, Dory Funk Jr. was able to handle this two title matches and brought the title home. So Baba couldn't win. Inoki couldn't win. There must be something bigger and better in America. So just, as a kid, that's how I understood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyhow, so NWA myth is so strong in Japan that becoming membership as a promoter, only big promoter can be member of NWA. And, evidently when Antonio Inoki's New Japan applied for the membership in the 73 and 74, 2 consecutive years, they were denied or something. And Baba was already, quickly became an official member of NWA in January of 73 or something. And that made Baba more authentic, orthodox, like international promoter as an image. Are you following me?
He was a part of you could think of it like a board, like the board of, I don't know, what sport also has a unified board like that?
Mm-hmm,
like it's
I don't know, like MLB, or the NFL conference. Yeah, or this. I guess Japanese people really love these like organizations,
divisions.
Yeah, more about like hierarchy or something almost. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's a vertical society. I guess like the everything is sort of viewed from the bottom up in Japan, whereas I got in the States, it's more all over the place.
Well, the equal freedom, equality, and democracy.
Well, that's the idea, but we're still a young nation trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But we're talking about wrestling, but
that's right.
But it's not completely separate from what we're talking about today.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm trying to get is, I've asked you before that which presidential election you remember the most as a kid?
Yeah, I was thinking that it's either between the Clinton, Papa Bush, or
92,
or Gore and
2000
Bush Jr.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like a movie.
Big controversy.
Yeah,
the vote was so close, and he recounted, and actually Gore was winning, and all these things. It's weeks and months after the actual election, right?
Mm.
And in the very same year, 9/11 thing happened, And what I'm trying to get to is though that the presidential election and the big debate on television is like the the big TV show everybody sit home and watch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you kind of, even as a high school kid, you either become very liberal or or you choose to become very conservative or something. You know what I'm saying?
Sure,
So
you
it's like
form your own identity and your own ideas.
yeah, like almost like a black and white, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And for the majority of wrestling fans, wrestling fans, so reading oriented in Japan, but the fact that in Japan network channels always carried wrestling, right?
Right.
So Channel 4, Giant Baba's All Japan Television, right? And
Mm-hmm.
Channel 10, now it's Channel 5, but the TV Asahi, Antonio Inoki's New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's like a two big leads, right? And it was always like almost like a political debate how Inoki do his business or how Baba does his business and what's right and which one's more liberal or which one's more conservative or orthodox or almost like something to do with your value orientations, establishment, anti-establishment, NWA member, Giant Baba. And then if Inoki wasn't an NWA member, he'd go ahead and create their own IWGP that like something bigger and better than what NWA was. And all these things that as a kid, Japanese wrestling fans always kind of decide, which Inoki or Baba, which was the right guy to be doing this thing, kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, it makes sense. It's different from how things developed in the States, though.
Yeah.
Just because, and for the main reason, I mean, just because there were so many more territories, so people could only see what was, physically around.
In your state. That's right. Up not until Vince McMahon's 1984 national expansion and cable TV and pay-per-views.
Yeah, so a lot of people, I think, might have been unfamiliar with different styles. They thought, you live in New York.
Yeah. Oh, I know that because
WWF.
I lived in Minnesota. So
That's AWA.
Yeah, Ganya's AWA was the only major league of professional wrestling. That's right. But in Japan, yeah, the country size of about California, and always had two major league of professional wrestling, and doing the business so differently that it's like you almost have to make your own decision, I guess, that you be a Inoki type fan or a Baba type fan,
Mm-hmm.
And we already covered that in the previous episodes, but we have to go over one more time that like in 74 there was Antonio Inoki against Strong Kobayashi, almost like a forbidden door, like a New Japan's Antonio Inoki, and then IWA Kokusai International, the third company's world champion Strong Kobayashi, that the two Japanese champions fought against each other to make who was the best, right, in Japan. At the time, Strong Kobayashi sent his challenging letter to Giant Baba. Naturally, Giant Baba pretty much ignored it, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's another Japanese against Japanese very important single match that year, 74. Inoki against Kintaro Oki, the Korean name Kim Il. Technically, he's Korean, citizen, but he was Kintaro Oki in Japan. The original, Ricky Dawson's original Three Musketeer was Baba Inoki against and Kintaro Oki. There was Three Musketeer, kind of like the third man, Orson Welles, right?
That's right.
Yeah, the third man. And Inoki already had Inoki against Strong Kobayashi, Japanese champion against Japanese champion, the same year, 74. The third man always. Kintaro Oki against Antonio Inoki. That the reason this match was so big was that when year after Inoki created his New Japan Pro Wrestling and Baba created All Japan Pro Wrestling, that the mothership JWA went down, right? The original Nippon Pro Wrestling went out of business, and Kintaro Oki was their last champion and stayed with the company until the dying day. Then the JWA went down, and naturally Kintaro Oki became freelancer and challenged Inoki for a very important single match. So that was a real big deal. So in 74, Inoki already had Inoki against Strong Kobayashi, Inoki against Kintaro Oki. Then that year, what Giant Baba did was that December of 1974, Baba brought then NWA World Champion Jack Briscoe, and he beat Jack Briscoe to become very first NWA World Champion in history.
Mm-hmm.
So he countered that with the establishment.
That was the the strategy at the time. Just two big companies going at it.
Yeah,
and trying to match each other step for step.
Right, and then following year, 75, Baba stole Kintaro Oki from Inoki and had Baba against Kintaro Oki, and Baba beat Oki in 6 minutes. Very interesting, right? Yeah. And in same 1975, there was Giant Baba's very first, it only happened once, but the open tournament in December of 75. There was a 3-week tour, which was really huge at the time. You have your Dory Funk, the Abdullah the Butcher, the Dusty Rose, Dick Murdoch, the Pat O'Connor, Mr. Wrestling from Georgia, the Baron Von Raschke from AWA, all these, Harley Race, of course, Abdullah the Butcher, Kintaro Oki, they joined that too, and they made big, huge, like open tournament, meaning open invitation. Inoki was invited to join that tournament. Naturally, New Japan ignored it.
NFL Sunday Ticket is now on YouTube and YouTube TV, which means that it just got easier to be an NFL fan, even if you live far away. Like maybe you like the Bears, but you're hibernating in Panthers territory. But with NFL Sunday Ticket, your out-of-market team is never more than a short distance away. Specifically, the distance from you to your remote control. NFL Sunday Ticket, now on YouTube and YouTube TV. Go to youtube.com/presale to get $50 off.
Terms and embargoes apply. Offer ends 9/19. No refund. Subscription auto renews.
What's up? It's Kaylee Cuoco. When it comes to travel, we all have a happy place. I just went to my happy place. I just went to Maui, and it was truly amazing. Priceline has always been about getting you to your happy place for a happy price with deals you really can't find anywhere else. Like up to 60% off select hotels in Costa Rica or 5-star hotels for 2-star prices in Cabo.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Interesting, huh?
Pretty. So when both companies got started in 72, what year did things? It was pretty heated from the get-go, but when did it really start to heat up between Baba and Inoki in the battle between both the channels?
It's always, I guess, Inoki felt that Baba was the person that he has to compete back in 65 when they started. Yeah. So you and I talked about that too, but Baba is 5 years older than Inoki. See, when Rick Dawson signed these two big rookie, Inoki was 17 and Baba was already 22, being baseball player and the former Giants baseball player, kind of big sports celebrity turning into pro wrestler. Inoki, relatively unknown 17-year-old, discus that shot putter truck runner from Brazil or something.
Mm-hmm.
So Inoki was always looking at Baba as somebody that's somebody I have to beat. Whereas Baba didn't really think about it that much. Yeah. And Baba was the first one to be sent to America and headlined all over America when Inoki was washing Rick Dawson's back. Does that make sense?
Mm. And it paints a picture. It paints a very specific kind of tone or the dynamic of the relationship between Baba and Inoki.
Yeah. And you and I already talked about this on Inoki episode, that Inoki didn't get to go to America until after Rick Dawson's passing.
That's right.
And 2 years staying in States, he didn't really go to mainstream territory like your big NWA territory. He toured LA. He spent a year in Oregon. He had time in Central States, in Kansas, a few months, probably 6 months in Houston, Texas, then went to Tennessee, and not really big league, right? It's a territory, that's fine, but Baba was, headlining Madison Square Garden when he traveled to States. and he had a match at the Olympic Auditorium title, world title match in Los Angeles. It's like what was different, And there's one myth that I don't know, it was a fantasy or fiction story or real, but when on Baba's way back to Japan and Inoki's way, into the States, those two met in LA in Japanese restaurant. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sometime in 64, and I'd say like January or February of 64, that the Baba on his way back home and Inoki just starting the US tour, those two met, and what Baba did was this crumbled $100 bill, put this the crumbled $100 bills into Inoki's pocket. I'm not going to use this, keep it. Good story, right? But it was only on Tokyo Sports paper, and nobody really witnessed that. You know what I'm saying? Story is very famous. Those two met in LA, and one's going home, one's start traveling, and the Baba, finishing up his US, tour, and he had a bunch of crumbled $100 bill in his pocket, and on his way home, I'm not gonna eat it. Hey, you keep it and put, the crumbled $100 bill just into Inoki's pant pocket. Okay. Inoki said, "Thank you very much." It's such a good story, but it's a myth, right? Probably.
Has to be.
Yeah, maybe, because there was no photo for it, But the story itself became very famous. Anyhow, they, Baba started being a big champion, in JWA, and Inoki spent his time in States. Comes back 2 years later, but did not join JWA. Instead, he and his buddy Toyonobori started Inoki's very first outlaw promotion, Tokyo Pro Wrestling, in 66 and whatnot. And that company went down, and Inoki joined JWA again in 67 or something. And for a 5-year period, Baba and Inoki were Happy Day International Tag Team Champions. Then they had to go split, separate way. Anyhow, let's move forward a little bit. So 75, open tournament. All the big, huge superstar from America, the Giant Baba as a promoter, he, invited all these American superstars to have this 3-week tournament. And Inoki countered this with just one match, Inoki against Billy Robinson, December of 1975. That was this, big story. And there's sequel to it. 6 months later, sure enough, I'd say it was June or July of 75, Giant Baba managed to steal Billy Robinson from Inoki and promoted Giant Baba against Billy Robinson PWF title match. The result? 2 out of 3 fall match. Giant Baba cleanly beat Billy Robinson 2 against 1 for the 2 out of 3 fall match. Inoki could not beat Billy Robinson. 60-minute time limit draw the previous year, December 75, in 75. I'm sorry. Then 6 months later, Baba managed to steal Billy Robinson from Inoki's New Japan, and it produced, a Baba against Billy Robinson. Sure enough, Giant Baba beat Billy Robinson clean. So there was a debate, because using Billy Robinson or somebody like a Kintaro Oki right in the middle, how Inoki beat Oki and how Baba beat Oki, how Inoki could not beat Billy Robinson, but Baba cleanly beat Billy Robinson in the following year. So Baba fans always say, see, Baba is better. But after that's instead Inoki, for the big thing, Inoki in 1976 finally produced his biggest legacy match, Inoki against Muhammad Ali. Yeah.
About Billy Robinson, to backtrack 1 second.
Yeah.
When I think about Billy Robinson in Japan, I don't really think of his run in All Japan. I mean, we all know he was there, but I think what's more talked about is the match with Inoki. How is it received?
Only happened once. Only
Right.
happened once.
But I feel
Yeah.
like it's talked about a lot
Forever.
more, even though Robinson spent probably towards the end of his career with
All the way,
Japan.
I mean, 76 all the way till his retirement in 1985. He stayed with All Japan.
Mhm.
Very loyal. They had like 3 or 4 tours each and every year. And he was part of the real world tag team tournament every year. Billy Robinson against and somebody like a Les Thornton, or Billy Robinson and somebody like a Wild Angus, or Billy Robinson and who so and so. That they're always part of this December, annual real world tag team tournament. And also there was like champion Carnival match, Billy Robinson against Bruce Brody. See, Billy Robinson won PWF title in Japan. Billy Robinson won the United National title, and Billy Robinson had Tenru as his partner and challenged Baba and Jumbo as international tag team in the titles. And basically Billy Robinson ran a lot of programs in All Japan through 70s, but the people not only, but pretty much remembers one match against Antonio Inoki, rather, more important match or something.
Hmm.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah, because
that's just how I perceive it, but I don't know how it's
talk
perceived.
about, of course, yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. That only happened once. Inoki against Billy Robinson. They talk about it like it was the greatest wrestling match ever. They talk about it all the way to today. And Billy Robinson actually spent a lot longer time as Baba's All Japan. That's a fact. And after he retired, between 1999 to 2007 or so, all the way to maybe like 2015 then, on and off for 15 years, 20 years, Billy Robinson came back and lived in Tokyo, being a coach and an instructor at the Snake Pit Gym in Koenji.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I became very, very good friends with aged Billy Robinson. And he would openly, talk about match, against Inoki so many times. But it was even hard for me to talk about his time in All Japan Pro Wrestling, because everybody remembers, yes, like you said, Billy Robinson against Inoki match. People remember it so much and talk about it to this day as one of the greatest wrestling match. And people remember there was a single match between Baba and Billy Robinson, right? And Baba clearly beat Billy Robinson for this, PWF title defense. And even after I became good friends with Billy Robinson, it was very hard for me to ask that question. Well, Inoki and you had this great single match, technical wrestling match, possibly, arguably, best wrestling match in Japanese wrestling history. And I could not ask him, but Baba beat you. I mean, old-fashioned guy, right?
Right.
Yeah, it was so hard. And how Billy Robinson put it was that Inoki was great wrestler and Baba was great promoter and honest person.
Not so
I
much
mean,
on the wrestling.
Yeah, but it's not like I cannot really ask him like, hey, Billy,
I understand. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
But I mean that idea, I think that's fair. That's a fair view.
And also he understand the fact that he was under contract with All Japan for next 9 years or so, and really basically made living with Japanese tour,
Mhm.
And he was there with Giant Baba's All Japan until 1985, until the day he retired from wrestling. And so he is grateful, for the time with All Japan. But the match he'd rather talk about was always the one with Inoki.
Mm.
Interesting, huh?
Mhm.
Yeah. But much like Korogach, Billy Robinson did not really talk about the mechanics of professional wrestling moves. He only wanted to teach catch as catch can.
Right.
Like what you do, yeah, at the gym. But he didn't really deny that the merit of bouncing off the rope. Because he didn't deny that. It's like if the rope is there, you use it. That's fine. Oh yeah, can you bounce off the rope? He never said it's a bad thing. So it was interesting. Yeah. I mean, bouncing off the rope is like a pro wrestling 101, right?
Right, but how when you think about MMA today, nobody's bouncing off the ropes.
Yeah, but well, it's still bounce off a rope now.
In MMA?
No,
guess-
I mean, professional
Oh,
wrestling.
pro wrestling, yeah. That's right.
Yeah, but even in the catch can class, when somebody or I asked him, using rope, okay, it's like utilizing professional rope is just fine. Just like it's not like tossing your all the opponent to the rope and then you expect him to come back. Instead, you run to the rope yourself and bounce off the rope yourself and come back with big shoulder tackle. That's how you use the rope. Oh, okay, sir. You know what I'm saying? So it was okay for Billy Robinson to use ropes. Oh, that's another subject for another day. And yeah, back to this promoter Baba and promoter Inoki always competing, not directly communicating with each other. But when the Billy Robinson match happens, yeah, Inoki has greatest match of all time. Then All Japan and Giant Baba steals Billy Robinson from him. When Kintaro Oki single match happens, Inoki against Kintaro Oki, Inoki beats him in 12 minutes with ruthless backdrop suplex. Then 6 months later, Baba steals Kintaro Oki from Inoki and beat Oki in 6 minutes. I mean, just there's like ulterior motive in a lot of things. That's a word. Like kids, like wrestling fans in Japan, kind of learned how to read between lines in young ages. Interesting, huh?
I think it's the same all around the world.
Yeah,
Probably.
yeah, because of who's gonna be who. Yeah,
I mean, it's also just the nature of the nature of wrestling is, or the reality of wrestling, how real it is. There's not real or it's not 50-50. It's just really, really large scale. It's a gray area, and it's gray or less gray wherever you go around the world. So I think the more you watch, the more you kind of have to build that sense.
your own foundation of understanding.
Yeah, what is the truth, or what should I be listening to,
Mhm.
and so on.
And you always have your own favorite. Yeah.
Sure, we all have our different ways of enjoying it too.
Yeah. So fast forward a little bit. So all through 70s into late 70s into early 80s, there was 1 year period that this All Japan and New Japan, more so than Inoki and Baba, they're competing against each other. When one company started stealing, another company's big talent. Spring of 1981. New Japan managed to sign Abdullah the Butcher away from All Japan. Ooh, right?
That's a big one.
Yeah, that's a big one. And following month, very quickly, Giant Baba signs Taiga Jitsu away from New Japan. So it's like a big, biggest heel switched aside, because all through my childhood almost, Inoki against Taiga Jitsu pretty much all year long. Whereas Giant Baba against Abdul the Butcher on TV all year long, pretty much as your typical, your, regular big bad guy opponent of, each company. And Inoki, or I should say more like TV, Asahi and New Japan Company signs Abdul the Butcher away from All Japan and TBS, Nippon TV. Then quick enough that Giant Baba and NTV Channel 4 sign away Taiga Jitsu away from New Japan. In addition to Taiga Jitsu, of course, his blonde-haired Japanese hero partner Umanosuke Ueda come with him too, right? Then there's Dick Murdoch and Kim Doc, Taiga Chun-Li, Taiga Toguchi. They were signed away from All Japan and then signed with New Japan. Then All Japan steal Chavo Guerrero and then junior heavyweight champion. It's a lot of wrestlers switch side. And very end of 1981, the final day or final match, final show of real world tag team tournament. Bruiser Brody, Jimmy Snuka against the Funks Okay, that was a final. The Funks, Dory and Terry Funk against Bruiser Brody and Stan Hansen. Who shows up with denim and cowboy hat? New Japan superstar Stan Hansen shows up in All Japan. That was the biggest surprise. But pretty much Shield stealing each other thing is like Baba signed Stan Hansen away from Inoki's, New Japan, and that's where Stan Hansen would spend next 20 years until his retirement. Yeah.
Those are big reactions at those shows, especially around that time. Really, like you can go back and watch, and since we've been living in this different pandemic time, it's going back now, like these days, and watching some of those reactions. It's unreal. Those were just very, very hot times for pro wrestling in Japan.
Oh yeah, real big, because the promotional was huge because 81, 82, 83. Not quite 3 years, but almost 3 years. Tiger Mask was the biggest thing in Japanese wrestling, New Japan. Okay, and then Baba side, there was the Funks, there was Brody, there was Mil Maskers, all these, but general public eyes were on Tiger Mask, and yeah, and Inoki actually was wasn't doing well, health wise. That's when he had first diabetic, I think in 81, 82. And if you remember one year that the final of Madison Square Garden tournament, that the tournament final was going to be Inoki against Andre the Giant, but Inoki couldn't make it. So Killer Khan took his place and had a final match of the tournament. And naturally, Andre the Giant won the tournament. And Inoki's health was declining at the time. Yeah. But the promotional war was such that I guess what I'm trying to get to is, Giant Baba never really initiated this war, never gave first attack. It was always New Japan doing, like a stealing Abdullah the Butcher or something away from All Japan. But the Baba have to retaliate, I guess, that steal Tiger G-Sing from him, or at the end, Stan Hansen decided to join, All Japan, leaving New Japan. But that was pretty much the end of these, big, stealing each other's talent. Because what happened was they elevated wrestlers' guarantee so much. You know what I'm saying?
It changed the shape of how things were going to be in the future, how negotiations and how business were going to be shaped in the future.
Yeah, what's interesting was by having Stan joining All Japan, they revived that Stan Hansen, Bruiser Brody, that Super Miracle Violence tag team or something like that, that only read about in Wrestling Magazine. Stan and Brody were the big tag team in America, years back, and we saw that on magazine, but never happened because Stan was working for New Japan and Brody was working for All Japan. So next 3 years, 82, 83, 84, Brody Stan Hansen combination had a strong 3-year run with All Japan until Brody decided to leave All Japan to join, sign with New Japan to have very important single match series against Antonio Inoki. And after all, that was Inoki's very last single match program against American Superstar. Yeah.
When we're talking about the early 80s, was Baba by this time less in a
main
high
event
card
picture?
main event?
I think so. Oh, well, I believe 82, 83 single match program upon Stan Hansen's arrival. Naturally, they had to do the single match, Baba against Stan. And this first Stan Hansen against Giant Baba match kind of revived Giant Baba once again as a single match superstar. Because they had good match. They pretty much traded PWF title back and forth. Yeah. They created another series of dream matches like Stan Hansen against Terry Funk, Stan Hansen against Dory Funk, Stan Hansen against Jumbo, and whatnot. All these single matches were created just because Stan Hansen's arrival. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Stan
And
Hansen was a power player in this time.
oh yeah, and it's very similar to what Terry Funk was in 70s, but he was much bigger cowboy. You know what I'm saying? Physically, yeah. And he worked complete heel style, but somehow working heel style, he was still cheered in Japan. That's very interesting part. He always worked all the way, and I mean, he all the way to Misawa, Kobashi, Kawada era. He always worked heel, right? But people always loved Stan Hansen. It just has to do with the character of Stan Hansen. I mean, he looks like a likable person, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean,
always worked heel.
If you had to make a general guess of why people love Stan Hansen so much in Japan, what would you think? What would you say?
No nonsense. Just go out there and just does what he does and beat everybody. I mean, no referee bumps. Oh, they did that with Joe Higuchi, referee, but he came off like the toughest guy of all. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah. And also, he actually was so old fashioned that Stan Hansen was the type of wrestler who protected his finish so well. See, when he uses his left arm Western lariat, clothesline, of course, he beat the guy 1, 2, 3. He never let anybody kick out his Western lariat at the count of 2. When he uses it, he wins. So it's like people were conditioned that when he start touching his elbow pad and the signals the audience that the Western lariat's coming, he gives big clothesline, boom, he really wins. He beat Baba, he beat Jumbo, he beat Terry Funk, he beat Dory Funk. He just all these established superstars of All Japan roster. One by one, Stan Hansen actually beat him clean because that's how he was produced. But very, very convincing. And Stan Hansen never had to cheat to win. I mean, that's very important in Japan, Heel doesn't mean you cheat. I mean, the American bad guy, and also this physically so big that there's nothing you can do about. I think Vader, decade later, inherited the image.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like a big time heel, but you don't really cheat. You're just brutal.
They were believable. They were believable
Oh,
because of
yeah.
athleticism and their size.
Yeah. And also there's like almost like an image gap that he works like big heel in the ring, but when he does the TV appearance or the interviews in the magazine, Stan Hansen comes in with this Coke bottle, glasses, and a 10-gallon hat, smiling and answers the interview like an intelligent human being.
But in the States, he would do his promos quite differently. If you remember,
Right, like the Texas, the bull rope and chewing tobacco.
Chewing a whole case of tobacco
and
falling out of his mouth,
all over your announcer.
Yeah, exactly. Totally different from his presentation in Japan. Yeah. I wonder. Yeah, it's that's wrestling. It's especially back then. It was almost. It's more lucrative to have those two images in two different places.
And also, right, because in Japan, there is no promo like American television.
Right.
You don't grab a microphone and do your gimmick, When you do the interview or even television interview, or they do like a sport interview or a magazine interview for that matter, they come to hotel and you have a room to sit and do the interview and the photos being taken and the videotape being videotaped, and that Stan Hansen shows up like a gentleman. Same way Brody was too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not just crazy person. Come off pretty crazy in the ring, and technically he's not like wrestler, right? He does punches and kicks and stumps and big knee drop by the apron and then the elbow drop and the clothesline at the end. What's the wrestling moves, right? Mm. But it's just so convincing. This guy beats everybody clean. That was Stan Hansen. And then also I think that the Stan's backstory of Stan Hansen and Jumbo Tsuruta, had spent their rookie years together in Amuleto. That helped too. There's a photo in the magazine that the rookie year Stan Hansen and Jumbo Tsuruta in the same apartment complex. They shared ramen noodles or something.
Mm.
Good story, huh?
Mm.
Yeah. And also, Stan Hansen trained under the Funks, in rookie years. That helped.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a kind of the connection in Japan. There were a lot of Texas-based or Texas-originating workers from Amarillo. Not just Americans, but you had Jumbo, you had Tenru who was there. There was
Ted DiBiase, Dick Slater. Yeah, of course. Yeah. And Stan Hansen taking over where Terry Funk was standing.
I think that's also something that really gave All Japan a more NWA flavor, because it was a lot of, they did send regular talent that was popular in both the States and in the NWA and in Japan, like the Funks.
Yeah. And then also aging Terry Funk against Stan. And then people want Terry Funk to win, but younger Stan Hansen will beat Terry Funk.
1984, 1983.
Yeah, around there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that the new generation, like, they weren't all that much younger, actually, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But Stan and Brody against Dory and Terry Funk, oh God, it was like a battle of generation that the Stan Hansen, Bruiser Brody era has come, And that was very interesting era. But the Giant Baba was there to produce all that. And not really involved in the main event program. Still working every night, though, the 6-man tag team situation, Yeah.
So he was just at I guess by the mid 80s onwards, he was more of the creative and a business type of role.
Yeah, but never really retired.
Right.
But never was in.
He was still wrestling every night.
Every night. Yeah. 6-man tag team and come in and do his big boot. Yeah. And it's good to really good to see him, kind of like your grandpa, the 3 generations, your grandpa and yourself and your kids, all 3 generations of wrestling fans watching All Japan. Yeah.
There's something comforting or nostalgic or something safe that you can watch. It seems like Baba always promoted All Japan. Well, I forget what the phrase was exactly. Something like a bright and
明るく楽しく激しく. Yeah, right.
How would you translate that into Japanese or into English?
Bright, fun, loving.
Entertaining or
intensely, like 激しく. Yeah.
So it had those foundational feelings or ethics that always sort of guided the product. I mean, in a subtle way, but you wouldn't see what you would see in New Japan and All Japan. That's right.
Right. All Japan, that the Moeru Tokon is like a fighting spirit of Antonio Inoki, and everybody has to work like a Inoki clone, huh? Almost, yeah. All black and tights and black, all black shoes and all that. Fujinami. Well, Choshu had the white boots, but everybody basically wore simple black trunks, nothing on it, right?
And you said earlier it had an appeal to, if you were a young man in your 20s, it's going to appeal to that demographic. Whereas, let's talk about that a little more, because especially in the 80s, when the head-to-head battle wasn't as intense, it was still going on, but it wasn't like in the late 70s. What was it like, the differences between I guess
Japan and All Japan?
Yeah, and the fan bases.
Mid 80s into late 80s?
Yeah, by the time Baba had turned into more of a promoter and had that more promotional role.
We have to, New Japan was always like a Japanese star against Japanese star oriented, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And there was Riki Choshu with long hair turned heel on establishment within New Japan, challenged Fujinami, right? And eventually Riki Choshu will be challenging Inoki, and that will be Inoki against Choshu, single match program. And there was UWF, the Akira Maeda, Nobuhiko Takada, the Yoshiaki Fujiwara, whatnot. They are challenging Inoki within New Japan frame, like a changing professional wrestling into their style of professional wrestling. And physically, that's what Inoki was doing initially, but in late 80s version of Inoki couldn't really handle, single match against Akira Maeda to have convincing single match, right? And therefore, Akira Maeda against Antonio Inoki in mid 80 never took place. 40 years later, like last year, Inoki and Akira Maeda had some YouTube interview kind of thing that Inoki admitted, hey, I was scared, man, right? I mean, now he's 40 years later, Inoki's old enough, 70-some-year-old Inoki would admit, I couldn't do the match. What are you talking about, right? So that's okay 40 years later. But Inoki himself knew that he couldn't come up with convincing finish to beat, up and coming shoot image Maeda or Fujiwara single match. Fujiwara at the same time was always willing to put Inoki over fine, but Inoki had trouble coming up with his convincing storyline that like almost contradicting himself that Inoki was the one who was going to change professional wrestling into legitimate sports, wasn't he? Right?
Him or his disciples. Takara was pretty much that guy in the 90s.
Right, UWFI, but the Funaki Pancras, but they all ended up being like different company. They have to run their own wrestling company to do so. You know what I'm saying? Not under Inoki umbrella. So, but Inoki produced more Japanese superstar than Baba. See, Baba always had lots of American superstar and Jumbo and Tenryu. You had to wait for Misawa, Kawada, Kobashi, and Taue until late 80s. And there were a 2-year period, 85 and 86. Riki Choshu and his 15 guys signed with All Japan and worked All Japan. Remember? As Japan Pro Wrestling. It's kind of confusing, but they named, in Japan, like an English title, Japan Pro Wrestling, Riki Choshu and 15 of his guys, they all invaded All Japan and started having Japanese against Japanese. And 85 and 86, there was like, when you go to All Japan show, there's like 13 matches, All Japan, Baba and Jumbo and his group, right? And Riki Choshu, Japan Pro Wrestling, they're 15, 20 guys. And Americans. And also Russia, Kimura, the Ashura Hara, the ex-IWA, Kokusai guys. It's like you couldn't fit everybody at the Korakuen Hall dressing room. Guys were dressing in the stairways. It was a time period. Then 87, that Riki Choshu and his 15 guys returned to New Japan, and somehow All Japan, that the crew become kind of skeleton, right? That's when Tenryu turned heel for the first time up against Jumbo Tsura. Therefore, Jumbo against Tenryu became very strong program this time. Yeah.
And
what happens in one company affects the other company. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they sort of needed each other to somehow not exist, but thrive.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Because by the time Brody went to New Japan to have single match program against Antonio Inoki, well, All Japan already had your Terry Gordy, Steve Williams, Danny Spivey, the Johnny S, Dynamite Kid, Davey Boy, the big new American crew. Yeah. And Jumbo, used young Tiger Mask Misawa as his partner. And Tenryu had Ashura Hara as a partner. It's like a different 2 or 3 different factions within All Japan. So they have pretty healthy big roster again. And yeah. And Baba just was producer and promoter. Never retired though. Always worked 6-man tag team situation right before intermission. Yeah.
And thinking about the kind of the makeup of both companies, it was also New Japan for the most part was, like you said, more of a Japanese centric company owned by Japanese television company. It gave it a different flavor.
Yeah. And I guess Antonio Inoki was always more elusive, right?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of mysterious. Whereas Giant Baba was openly promoter, mom and pop,
Right.
and Mr. and Mrs. Baba running a company, and all these Japanese wrestlers are their children, kind of thing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the late 70s, early 80s are also where we started to see the beginnings of his rookies, his children.
Yeah.
We already had Jumbo, Tenru is there.
Actually,
Onita.
young Onita, right, right.
And then a little later, you'd get Misawa and Kawada and Kobashi.
Sure. Yeah.
So this, I guess, was also when Baba was backstage. He was also, cultivating the garden. He had all of his sons ready to go for the late 80s and early 90s, and it kind of like we were talking about, it faded out. He sort of phased himself out of the main event picture. It wasn't the same as, we were talking earlier about Billy Robinson and Baba beating him in 6-7 minutes. But
Baba beating him in 2 out of 3 fall match. And beating Kintaro Oki in 6 minutes. Yeah. Yeah. So it's not like that the direct combat against what New Japan does.
Right. Different style.
Yeah. And pretty much like just into their own world. That's what pro wrestling should be. Yeah. Because when Inoki was, aging as a headliner, Inoki wouldn't retire. Instead, he'll go to politics, right? Yeah.
It seems like, he ducked out.
He became politician. Yeah, like a real politician, and won the election and all this, and he never retired. But the other guys run wrestling business, whereas Baba never left the building.
So, and also around I guess later in the 80s, there was also the falling out that eventually Baba had with NWA and Crockett.
That's what I was trying to get to. I mean, what was so interesting, it was so NWA oriented all the way to 80s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even in 1986, Giant Baba invites both NWA champion Ric Flair and AWA World Champion Rick Martel together, in the same tour at the Sumo Palace. Ric Flair against Rick Martel, NWA World Champion against AWA World Champion, happened in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Of course, double count out. Yeah.
That was a sort of an all Japan, or I guess, was this Baba's, idea or trend of the double count out finish?
Not a trend, but I guess there's something they had to, because, you see Japanese wrestling fans, I guess after the magazine started becoming weekly, the summer of 83, Baseball Magazine magazine became weekly, Pro Wrestling, Shukan Pro Wrest. And following year, Gong magazine became weekly, and there was a weekly fight, the tabloid paper out of Osaka. So, and Big Wrestler magazine that became weekly, and Tokyo Sports had that The Pro Wrestler magazine weekly. So there's like 5 different weekly magazines covering wrestling that come out every week, right? Mm-hmm. And they have news stories, so they forced wrestling company to be a little bit more honest about what's happening, right? Because they cover it, And double count out finish became, or the double DQ or no contest, or somebody get DQ'd, all these things became so predictable. It's like that hurt the business, because when, like you said, Ric Flair, NWA champion against Rick Martel, AWA champion, the double title match, that looks good on paper, but smarter fans were just going to predict, right, double count out finish coming, right? So Baba sensed it. It's like it's not the thing to do anymore in late 80s. They really, Giant Baba was the first promoter to erase that notion. Therefore, what would you do? You don't have those matches. And
Right.
also, you don't produce Ric Flair against Rick Martel again. And when Jumbo against Tenryu single match, you have finish. And that's when All Japan became really, really popular again in late. See, after Riki Choshu and his 15 guys left and went back to New Japan, see, All Japan fans were afraid. It's like, oh God, we lost all those big stars, right? And we still have Stan Hansen, we still have Jumbo, but Jumbo was, always good, but never was as popular as New Japan superstars. Really, yeah. But if you remember, Jumbo became very first AWA World Champion, beating Nick Bockwinkel in Japan, and actually kept the title for the next 3 months. He toured all the AWA territory until he dropped the title to Rick Martel and all these, and everything, all the title matches was televised in Japan and placed Jumbo as very special, your main event guy, right? But still, back to wrestling fans' mind but there's when you have two superstars on single match situation, Baba would always choose DQ finish or double count out kind of thing, and just not. I mean, it's hard to go home after the show and feel good about it. People want to see finish, right?
Yeah, especially if every month the big match of the month is pretty much that. I mean,
yeah, when Inoki do the thing, you have Riot, right?
Right.
Yeah. So Baba actually sensed it as a promoter, and since he's not an active top talent, that he was able to order wrestlers his new rules, clean finish, I guess. That was around the time. And also, what was interesting was, though, Baba's, such a Mr. NWA, establishment type guy, right? As a promoter. Baba was the first one to cut ties with NWA in America, which was interesting because the time was the 89, 88, 89, 90. You don't actually have NWA in America anymore.
That's right.
Yeah, it's like WWF and Vincent Kennedy McMahon era, and NWA Crockett promotion, was sold to Turner TV company, and that became WCW.
Yeah, things changed.
And now WCW and WWF, the two, a lot of change. And also, Giant Baba looked at Ricky Steamboat and didn't really feel that guy was the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. And by then, they were still using the name NWA World Heavyweight Champion, but they didn't really travel territory to territory because there were none. Remember?
Right.
NWA Crockett promotion bought in Central States, right? Kansas and Missouri, and NWA Florida Championship Wrestling, that went out of business, and all the NWA territory dying, and there was no one common traveling world heavyweight champion anymore. And Ric Flair, NWA World Heavyweight Champion, fine, but he only stayed around Crockett territory. Remember? Yeah, Crockett territory, fine. The Northern South Carolinas, Virginia, West Virginia, probably ran card in Baltimore, the Boston a little bit, and went all the way to Meadowlands. But Giant Baba didn't feel obligated to that anymore, and says there was no, big governing body as NWA as we knew it anymore, right? Yeah. And he has Stan Hansen, that in 88, Bruiser Brody came back. You already have Terry Gordy, Steve Williams is still affiliated with Dory Funk and his people. That's when Baba came up with this idea of unifying all the singles championship belt. PWF, Pacific Wrestling Federation champion, International Heavyweight title, Tenryu's UN, United National title, all three titles would be unified. And the match was between Stan Hansen and Jumbo Tsuruta. That became today's Triple Crown. That
Yep.
Triple Crown is just as big as any World Heavyweight Championship. That's how Baba felt. But that makes sense, though, right?
Well, that was kind of the image of All Japan, right? They had the biggest championship, the best. They were the big leagues.
Then, yeah, and that in mid '80s, this if you have and when you have three singles championship belt in one company, PWF belt, international belt, and UN belt, is like who really is the best? Like a bigger titles. Like Stan Hansen holds one. Henry holds the UN, Jumbo holds international heavyweight title. They individually defending their own title in the same show. It's like I was scratching my head myself, So, but the creation of Triple Crown was like a really, really big thing, and it was very symbolic because it was a very first year of Heisei era in Japan.
Okay.
Please explain Heisei to American listeners.
Oh, Heisei. I mean, how can you explain the I guess the
Imperial era,
imperial periods?
Yeah. There's a Meiji era. There was Taisho era. I was born in Showa era in 1989 when Showa Emperor Hirohito died, and his son becomes emperor, and therefore Heisei starts. And this is fourth year of Reiwa era right now.
That's right. Yeah.
New emperor. Yeah.
So I mean, and I guess to make it more, it's not difficult to explain. I'm just trying to choose the right words. It's kind of like because it does affect how you view the wrestling, because there's definitely like a Showa feel, a Showa
flavor,
era,
yeah, sure,
pro wrestling, or Heisei.
era.
Absolutely, that's
30-year period of Heisei. Yeah.
So you think of a certain. I guess you could think about it if you were thinking about it in wrestling terms with WWE, like the Attitude Era or Ruthless Aggression Era, or I mean, it's not exactly
or
that.
Regional era to a national expansion era. Yeah,
something like that. It's a bigger
Monday Night War era,
a larger scale idea, a little bit more room for interpretation and explaining what it is.
Right, but this unification of PWF title, International Heavyweight title, and UN, United National Heavyweight title, the unification happened the very first year of Heisei era, which was 1989. And on up until today's All Japan's Triple Crown, not using the physical same belt, but Baba did not create the new physical belt. Instead, they made wrestlers hold 3 physical belts into the ring. Yeah.
You had to see it to believe it.
Yeah, like 3 different belts. You remember that the Stan Hansen holding all 3 belts and swinging?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what was interesting is, though, that the 3 belts, when you have 3 belts, which belt would you like to wear in your waist? And Jumbo always choose to wear international heavyweight belt in your waist and holding UN and PWF title in his hand. And like some wrestlers, like up to like a Jun Akiyama, he choose to wear PWF belt in his waist, And Tenryu would be better if he wore UN belt, huh?
I guess I'm trying to imagine what the UN belt is. The
Intercontinental, maybe.
Which one is the lighter brown color?
Lighter brown color. The black belt over Luthes design belt is PWF.
Right.
And Eagle belt. The initial Eagle belt is international. Yeah. And Stan wore none of them. He always held all 3 belts in his hand. Steve Williams chose international belt to wear. Yeah. And all the way to like people like Yoshihiro Takayama or Minoru Suzuki, they held the belt in their hands too, though.
Sure.
What Keiji Muto did in 2002, he wore all 3 belts in his waist.
He did that, and I remember he also would wear them across his neck.
Tag team belts. So when he had 5 different belts. Yeah.
Very creative.
But the championship belt is like very meaningful in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like it's destiny. It's the idea of the Triple Crown being birthed on the beginning of the Heisei era, and also it's thinking about Baba. It was also a time to start thinking about him in a different way, different light, because from then on,
in a different value. Like say goodbye to NWA and NWF era, right?
Mhm.
And interestingly enough, though, in 1992, Inoki, well, it's more like not Inoki, but it's a Sakaguchi version of New Japan Pro Wrestling signed partnership with WCW
Mhm.
and brought NWA belt into G1 Climax and brought the Ric Flair design gold belt, and they had a Rick Rude against Masa Chono and to crown their version of NWA World Heavyweight Champion in '92.
Mm.
It was real confusing then.
But I remember it though. I remember that on TV. It still feel like a big international deal. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Which
so there's got all these American wrestling landscape and politics and Japanese wrestling landscape is kind of mangled and tangled and got real confusing in '90s.
Mm.
Yeah.
I guess in the '90s we're gonna have to wait until next time to start on that.
Right. But tonight, Baba. Let's stop here. That the Giant Baba as a promoter was the first one to say goodbye to NWA establishment because there's no such. I mean, like not '60s, not '70s, not '80s. NWA was pretty much no longer, huh? Yeah. And he didn't really produce. They did that though in early '80s, but later on, that the Jumbo against Ric Flair, the Baba didn't want to do it. When Ricky Steamboat brought his gold belt as NWA champion, the NWA title match was between Ricky Steamboat against Misawa Tiger Mask at the Budokan, and it wasn't even the main event. Interesting, huh?
I guess trying to think why he wouldn't want Steamboat as champion over there, but
he came in and defended his title.
But his wrestling style is actually pretty different.
Yeah, but in Baba's eyes, Ricky Steamboat was no longer representing big, good old NWA anymore.
Sure.
Yeah, he was Crockett's company champion.
So he's not as prime time player as he needed him to be or wanted him to be because the connection with the NWA, the Crockett thing, it's not exactly the same, mate.
Yeah, because in people's wrestling fans' eye, Stan Hansen so much better than Jim Crockett promotion right there. Oh well, that's debatable, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's where we should end, right around 1990.
Yeah.
And let's have one more Giant Baba episode.
Sure. Yeah, because next time we'll focus on the later part of his career as a promoter, because it was, like you said, it's promoting without any association with the NWA. Different time.
He had his American roster. Yes.
And we'll talk about the rest of it. We'll talk about Motoko Baba some more. We'll talk about all kinds of
the rise of Misawa, Kobashi, Kawada, Taue. Yeah. A whole new generation of later on to be your four pillars.
And you can say his sons or his grandsons of the All Japan era, the Railroad era.
Right. And also the lion logo of New Japan still exists today, and the Japanese map on the globe, the All Japan logo still exists to this day.
Yep. Same ones.
Yep. All right. Let's wrap it up.
Okay, so how can we reach you on social media, Fumi-chan?
On Twitter, Fumihiko Dayo, Fumihiko-Dayo, Fumihiko Dayo on Twitter, or just Fumi Saito on Facebook.
And I'm at Justin M. Knipper, Knipper on Twitter. We'll be back with you next week with Giant Baba Part 4. So, Fumi, take it away.
So long from Tokyo.
It's playoff time, and it's now or never. Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. The app is really simple to use. Pick 2 or more players across any sport, pick more or less on their projection, and you can win up to 1,000 times your money. PrizePicks now offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Join PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, available to play in more than 40-plus states, including California and Texas. PrizePicks, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code GOAL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code GOAL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
Some things you wouldn't mind being stuck with, like a huge inheritance. But a phone that has to be plugged in just right so it charges is not one of those things. Switch to Verizon and we'll pay off your old phone up to $800 via prepaid MasterCard for a new one on us. Just trade in any phone from our top brands with select unlimited plans. $829.99 purchase with new smartphone line on select unlimited plans. Minimum $90 per month with autopay plus taxes and fees for 36 months required. Less $830 trade-in/promo credit applied over 36 months. Trade-in terms apply. Payoff phone requires smartphone purchase and port-in with new smartphone line on select plan. Must provide most recent bill showing payoff amount of eligible phone. Additional terms apply.